Hey guys, in this video we're going to be taking a look at Escort's newest radar detector, the Escort Max360. Now I just did a full review of the detector. We went into a ton of detail, talking about the performance, the features, the false filtering. We even took a look at the inside of the detector to get a feel for what's under the hood. We went into a ton of detail with that, but that video is over an hour long with test results and tons of videos and information. This is going to be basically the same idea, but the short version of it. We're just going to cover the highlights of the detector, so if you want kind of the short version of the review of the Max360, that's what this is going to be about. So, cool. What are we looking at? Well, this is basically Escort's kind of all-in-one jack-of-all-trades detector. Pretty much you can just plug it in here on your windshield like this, very easy to do, and it's got tons of bells and whistles all under the hood. It doesn't require much configuration. You don't have to pair it with a cell phone to get all the basic functionality, so if you want something that's just easy to use and can do pretty much everything, this is going to be a good choice. The previous generation version of the detector was this guy right here. This is the Passport Max 2, which basically you plug it in and it can do everything for you automatically. It's pretty easy. What they've done is they've basically taken the Max 2, they've taken a V1, they've combined the two and merged them into one detector, and now we've got the Max 360, which is basically going to be like your Max 2, except we've got arrows. Look at that. So, like the V1, we've got arrows. They've changed and improved some of the things. You'll notice the arrows are blue, they're not red, so you can actually customize the colors, and there's a bunch of things that they've done to actually improve things over what was done before. So let's just kind of jump into what we can expect here with this detector and what it's all about. Well, obviously we've got our arrows. You've got, one thing I do like is they do have a GPS chip built into the detector, which gives us a bunch of benefits. Number one, it can actually, as you're driving around, it can learn where the false alerts are from grocery stores with those automatic door openers or speed signs. Any of those sources of falses, it can actually learn them and automatically filter them out. Some other detectors can do it too, but you got to either press a button to do it manually, or you got to pair it with your phone and use your phone's GPS. This guy can do it all on its own, and it can do it automatically without you having to press any button, so it's pretty handy in that sense. It also has some blind spot filtering built in. This is one of the most annoying sources of false alerts, and in every radar detector on the market, every single one, including this one, is susceptible to it. They've done some improvements with this one so you can get blind spot falsing without having to enable TSR, which is pretty interesting. What that means is you're not going to take as much of a performance penalty with the filters with this detector as you would with some of the previous ones. And it can still do a pretty reasonably good job. Not perfect again, no detector is, but there's been some improvements there. You also have, with the GPS chip, you can, when you're traveling around at low speeds, you can quiet the thing down if you're not speeding or anything. So it just helps in town to deal with some of the other false alerts as well. Thanks to the GPS chip, you've also got alerts for red light cameras and speed traps. So as you're driving around, the detector will let you know where they are. There's some improvements here over the competition. There's things like the database is updated weekly, versus some other detectors maybe every couple months or haven't been updated in over a year. So you get really frequent updates. The red light cameras actually take into account what direction you're traveling. So if you're going this way, but the tickets are only issued in this direction, you won't get notified if it's not actually a threat. So it's more intelligent than just saying, oh, there's an alert at this intersection. It also knows if it's going to be a threat in the direction you're driving or not. So it's actually quieter. So keep that in mind if you're driving around and you see a sign, but your detector doesn't go off. It may not necessarily be broken. Nothing's wrong necessarily. Performance-wise, it's going to give you pretty reasonable performance. It's not going to be the top-end detector on the market. For those of you guys who are wondering how it compares to, the traditional champ of long-distance range, the Redline, it will not actually be able to beat the Redline when it comes to range. What they've done is they basically just reused the same platform in the Max and the Max 2, and then they've added a rear antenna. So the front antenna, which is located right there, same thing. So it's going to give you the same performance. So realistically, in the real world, you'll get adequate protection against most threats. You're not going to get the best performance possible. So if you're looking for performance and range, you will want to look at something like a Redline, for example. If you're looking for something that kind of does everything and it's more easy to use, it's plug and play, you don't have to worry about segmenting your detector or using a bunch of advanced options. If you want something that's a little bit easier to use, if you sacrifice a little bit in range, this guy may be a better option for you. So, trade-offs. The detector also has Bluetooth built in, so you don't have to buy a Bluetooth module. When you have the Bluetooth built in, you'll be able to pair it with your phone. With the phone, you can get real-time alerts to the cloud. You can see where other people's alerts are, kind of handy. Waze, if you've ever used that app, is free. You'll actually get much more alerts. That actually works better. But with this guy, it is integrated with your phone, so when you get an alert, it'll actually display both on the detector and on the phone. And you have the option of reporting it to other people, or you can say it's a false and you can press the lockout button. So pretty handy there. You do have the phone integration available. Also makes it easier to go in and actually change the settings through the phone rather than the detector. Kind of nice. Another nice thing if you got it paired, I'm not on the road right now driving, I'm sitting in a parking lot in front of a Starbucks obviously, but you can see when I'm driving around it can access the speed limit information. You do need the phone for this. When you have the speed limit, it also displays right there, so it's kind of nice at a glance to actually see what the speed limit is on the road that you're driving. Only the Escort ones do this. It's not always accurate. Sometimes it doesn't have the speed limit information. It doesn't take into account things like construction zones when you have temporary changes. It's not perfect, but it's kind of handy for the times when, you know, you want it, you're driving around. In terms of reactivity and quick trigger, it's a very reactive detector. It's not the fastest detectors, especially the ones that use BSRDR and can speed it up that way. Those detectors technically will be faster, but for a detector that is sweeping the entire KA range, in that respect, it's actually a very fast detector. So pretty good in that respect. The mount I actually like quite a bit. It's got the sticky cup mount, so attaches that way. And it also has a magnetic mount, so you notice I can just plug it in, and there's no buttons to press. It's really easy to remove, really easy to put back on, and it's actually one of my favorite mounts now. It's pretty awesome in that regard. There's been some issues with bouncy mounts before. With these ones, they've actually made some improvements to the sticky cups. So I know I can do that now and I'm cheating. That's not what it's like in real life. When you're driving with the new sticky cup, it's been improved over the previous gen sticky cup. So if you've had issues with bouncy Maxes in the past, the new sticky cup here is not going to lead to issues here. So the detector is actually nice and stable. So I really like that a lot. What else have we got? In terms of the build quality, there's been some issues with the previous gen Maxes where the detectors actually, they'd kind of split apart, and that wasn't a good thing. Hey officers, how's it going? Hey. So with this one, the build quality is actually a lot better now. So we don't have the same issues with the case splitting in half or the panels falling off, that kind of stuff. The lens on the back has been improved, so you're not going to have the same issues with the lens falling off. So good stuff there. The detector is big. It's actually the biggest detector ever. It weighs like almost 3/4 of a pound, so it's heavy, it's big. It can be an issue depending on where you've got it mounted in your car. Even in my car, I drive a Miata, it's kind of small, but I can still mount it there. Yes, it does definitely block more, of my visibility than some other detectors, but it's still usable. This thing, because there's a big gap there, I can't put it all the way flush with the top of my car, like near the rear view mirror, so there's still a gap there, plus there's the extra size, but nonetheless it's still usable in my experience. Your mileage may vary, of course. Let's see, what else have we got? I really like the new display. It's got the OLED display like the Max. There's a bunch of information that it can display here on screen. If we trigger an alert, you see it can display front antenna, rear antenna. We can get our frequency as well. That's one thing that I do like over the V1. The V1 can do our arrows and whatnot, but it can't display anything as far as the frequency information. So if you want frequency information with the V1, you're going to have to pair it with a phone. And that's kind of what I mean, is like this guy doesn't require a phone to get all the really useful information. You can just display it right here on the detector, which is pretty handy. Now that said, if you pair your detector with a phone, you'll get the extra functionality for all these detectors. The V1, in my experience, is better than the Max360 if you have it paired with the phone. So this guy, as you can see, it can do more here just on its own without a phone, but if you pair it with the phone, and if you run YaV1, the Android app, and I've done tons of videos, talked about it all the time, if you run YaV1, that package, if you take the time to set it up, in my experience, and for me, I like it a lot better than what this guy has to offer. I like that it can give me all the information for every single signal, the strength, the direction, the band, the frequency. Here, I can get the frequency information, but really only for one signal. With this guy, it'll give me all the information for every single signal, and that's really, really handy. So I like the additional situational awareness. That said, there are some improvements here. You'll notice there's different colors, like it was a blue arrow. Let me just pull this up real quick. Radar settings, we've got a couple different ways of displaying our arrows. So we can do different colors. We can display our arrows just having one signal. We can have our arrows display maybe 2 signals at a time. We can have the colors set by what band we're seeing. So if we've got like a KA band alert, that'll be red. If we've got a K band alert, that'll be blue. So you see we can display multiple signals at the same time like this, and the arrows can be different colors, and you can configure them to what you want. So there's some really cool options there, and the colors make it easier to identify what's going on versus the V1 where I know I don't have it plugged in right now, but all the lights on it are red, and so it makes it a little bit tougher to tell at a glance what's going on, where the colors here, they do help. So I like that as well. Let's see, what else do I have here in my notes? The arrows, they are a little bit laggy, and what I mean by that is the V1 is really good, where as soon as you pass the threat, your arrows will go from front to back. With the Max360, there's some lag there. On average, it takes about 4 to 5 seconds for the arrows to flip from front to back. I've seen as long as 9 or 10 seconds. And it's not a huge deal in practice, but it does kind of defeat the purpose of having arrows. If they're pointing the wrong direction, it's not really that useful. Like, yeah, you're going to slow down if you see KA, sure, great. But, I mean, if you're trying to figure out the officer that I just passed, is that actually him? The arrows are really useful for that, but if they're not actually pointing to the back when you pass the officer, they really start to lose their value. So they're not that great in terms of accuracy and pointing in the right direction, but they are helpful to have nonetheless. I'm hoping that Escort actually improves these to make them faster at changing around. Let's see, what else have we got? Yeah, let's see, let's talk about some bugs. Okay, the Max was known for 33.676-ish false alerts. Really annoying bug where when you would pass a car with like a K-band blind spot false, Chevys were notorious for this, it would display a KA-band threat, which was not good because then you would get false KA-band alerts, and if you have it paired with Escort Live, it'll then report it to the cloud, and now everybody else has to deal with your false alerts too. That issue's sort of been fixed here. You no longer have the 33.6x falses, but there are now false alerts that happen around 33.4xx, in that range. They seem to be triggered by other things, and sometimes they'll even get stuck on the detector where you can be driving around and the only solution is to turn off your detector and power cycle it. So kind of annoying in that regard. I don't know if it's related, but there's still some KA-band falsing issues that we're seeing here with the Max360. There's some issues with, I mentioned earlier, the build quality is better. The buttons here, some people have had issues with like the paint on the buttons fading off, or the buttons here, they actually glow when you get a signal. Maybe you can see it right now in the daytime, you can especially see it at night, but the light actually shines through the buttons. It's almost like there's a clear button with this sort of silvery paint on top, and the paint is actually, even on brand new detectors, like the light will shine through, and it looks like the paint is fading away. It just kind of has this sort of cheapy vibe to it from that. So I don't know if they're going to want to replace the buttons or anything. It's not a huge deal in practice, just kind of more of like a cosmetic thing, you know. Doesn't impact the performance or anything. But have noticed that a number of people have reported that issue, and I've seen it as well. So little minor details like that. Overall, it's not a bad detector at all. If you're looking for something that you can just put on your windshield, again, plug and play, you don't have to mess with advanced settings like BSRDR. It can scan the entire KA range, so you don't have to worry about out-of-tune guns. It's easy to use, you don't have to set up much stuff. You just plug it in and put it on your windshield. You've got frequency information, you've got arrows. In that respect, it's a good option. They fixed some of the bugs from the Max, like the bouncy mounts. There were some annoying high-pitched beeps that it used. In this one, they fixed some of the beeps and stuff, so there's been some nice little improvements there. In terms of laser detection, still a Max, so the laser sensor in there will still suck. I don't know why they put such a bad laser receiver in these radar detectors. It's worse than you'll see in like the V1. It's worse than what you'll see in the Red Line. Like the Red Line has a really good sensor. Hello. Sorry. Okay, so wrapping things up. Is it a good detector? Yeah, like I mentioned, it's got a lot going for it. It's the most expensive radar detector on the market. It doesn't have the longest range ever, so if you do want all-out performance, you are going to want to look maybe for another detector. But if you want something that's pretty easy to use, that's kind of one of the main appeals of this detector. It's designed to kind of appeal to the masses. You know, it may not be the detector of choice for the enthusiast because you don't get all the control you'll get with some of the other detectors, and you don't get the all-out performance. You know, and in a radar detector, the ability to detect radar ahead of you before you're being clocked, like, that's the main thing. And this detector, the Max360, is not especially great at it. It's pretty decent in most situations, but it's not that great. So it really comes down to what you're looking for. So with that said, should you get a Max360? I don't know. If what I've described sounds like what you're looking for, great, go for it. Retails for $650 online. And yeah, if I know I've mentioned a couple times the red line. This guy retails for $550. There's also the Magnum, which retails for $500. That's a good detector as well. It's a red line with a different case and name. The V1, it's more customizable. It doesn't have the colored arrows, but the arrows do work a little bit better. On its own, it's not going to be as good as the Max360, realistically speaking, but if you pair it with your phone and pair it with the V1, the Android app, you'll get a better, in my opinion, a better all-around package than what this guy offers. As long as you're willing to do the extra setup, pair it with the phone, use the Bluetooth dongle, that kind of stuff. For me, that's kind of my preferred package. Is it a better choice than the Max 2? Yeah, I'd say for sure. It solves a lot of the issues like the bouncy mounts. For an extra $50, you get arrows. The blind spot filtering has been improved, so you can actually run it without TSR, which is kind of nice. TSR, I'm sure, still would help too. Still doing a lot of testing with that and all, but anyways, it seems like it's a fairly decent package here. It's not going to be the universally best detector ever. There's other choices that, depending on what you need, may be better, maybe not, but that's pretty much a review of the Max360. I don't think it's going to be my preferred detector. We'll have to see. Still getting a feel for it. I've been running it for about 2 weeks or so. I do prefer the extra control and customization and whatnot, and I do like higher performance whenever possible. But nonetheless, I think this is going to be a great detector for the masses in general. If you don't need, or necessarily maybe know about, I don't know, all-out range and performance, this will be adequate for most situations. And one of the cool things is, yeah, it's pretty easy to use. Plug and play, does everything. It gets quieter over time as it learns your false alerts. Doesn't require you to press additional buttons to mute signals up over time, so it has a lot going for it. So there you go. There's a look at the Max360. You can take a look at my full review. I'll have a link in the video description, as well as where you can go to actually purchase this detector or any of the other ones that you saw mentioned here. All that will be down in the video description. So cool. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. Catch you later. Bye-bye.